Hi, this is Brad the Solar Guy. I'm here to answer all your questions about residential solar. Today, I'm going to talk about my second solar system that I leased. I'm going to go over all the numbers and why I did it. Stick to the end to see if it was worth it. So I installed a solar system when we built the house about 7.5 years ago. And we put up the max size system that we could at the time, given the interconnection rules in Massachusetts and with National Grid. I have another video on that if you want to see what ownership numbers look like after 7.5 years. The reason we needed more solar is because we used more electricity than the solar produced. So for the first couple of years that we had our own solar, it produced about 90% of what we used, and I got one electric bill in the winter in March. And it was usually a fairly substantial bill, but it wasn't a big deal. And then 2 years after we got the house, I got an electric vehicle. And then our electric bills started to come in January, February, and March. And the solar was doing its job. It's just I was using all that electricity and more now. So it was still working just fine. The electric rates weren't crazy. We also heat the house a little bit with natural gas, and that was inexpensive. 2 years ago, natural gas prices spiked, and also electricity rates spiked. And in that winter, between my electric bill and our natural gas bill, I paid over $3,000. And I was also paying for solar as well. The house was not designed to have that kind of utility bills at all. It was designed to have very low utility bills because of the solar. But because of the addition of the electric vehicle and my usage increasing, but more importantly, because of rates rising so much, the cost of just having to buy that little bit of electricity became too much. So I decided to get more solar. So I looked into solar again, and it was very interesting because I would prefer to own my solar, but I looked at that and the way that the cost of the system and current interest rates would have worked out that my monthly payment would have been more than the utility bill that it was offsetting. Now, obviously over time, a loan payment stays the same. I would have had a 15-year loan, and that payment will stay the same for all 15 years, and I would have gotten the tax credits and would have been a very good deal for me over time, certainly. I have no doubt about it. But my goal was to actually lower my monthly payment immediately. And so I also looked at a lease. And so currently, I think because of high interest rates, the loan I was able to that I would have had to get for ownership would have been a very high interest rate, and that affects hugely how that payment would have been higher than the electric bill that it was replacing. But with the lease, when I looked at it, I could cut my electric bill in half immediately and also be protected for 25 years and not have to pay for any maintenance or worry about fixing it in any way because I don't own it and I'm just getting a guaranteed amount of electricity for a certain price. Now, my price for my solar does go up 2.9% a year over the 25 years. And so I always look at it as the average price over that time is the way I look at what I'm paying. But the truth is I'm paying half now for my solar than I would have to the utility. Why did I choose lease over ownership? Well, it's very simple. When I did the math with the high interest rates, owning solar on my roof in Massachusetts would have been more expensive, at least at the beginning, than the electric bill was replacing. My goal was to lower my monthly payment immediately. So with a lease, I was able to do that. It was an easy choice. The lease will protect me over 25 years and save me tons of money right away.
Because this is the second solar system that I'm installing, we have added a second inverter in my garage mounted right near the first one. And as you can see, the first one's conduit is in the house construction because it was put in when the house was built. But this one, we actually had to string it along. So you can see from the roof, the conduit comes over the flat part of the roof and then around the building and then into the garage and then down to the inverter this way. And then also the inverter itself, you can see the conduit for the inverter being wired to my main service panel, which is my basement at the other end of the house. You can see it goes along there. And that was a long run of wiring from the inverter in my garage to my main service panel on the other end of the house. But they just followed the original route that the original wiring took, and it was all through ductwork, and it all worked out okay. But that was a little bit tricky. So for my leased solar, I had another 10.665 kW system installed on the roof. And I, again, don't know what brand solar panels those are. They are all black on black, and that's really the only thing that's important to me. Please check my other videos out for details on why. And also I went again with a DC optimized SolarEdge inverter system. Again, check out my other videos for why I made that choice. All right, let's go ahead and dive into my actual lease agreement and see what is the guaranteed amount of electricity it's going to produce and what I'm paying for it, as well as the projected amount of electricity. So Here we have my amended production guarantee table 1 because the agreement was amended after they came and checked out the site as part of the process, so we got it dialed into the exact numbers, which is what they're going to stand behind for the rest of the agreement. So it's estimated that it will produce 11,137 kilowatt hours in the first year, and they have this on a degradation schedule going down to only 9,875 kilowatt hours a year in the 25th year. As I've explained in another video, in the wild I haven't seen any degradation, so we'll see if that is really true, if it really does produce less over time. And then my monthly lease payment is $156.84 a month for the first year, and that goes up to $161.39 the second year, and goes up 2.9% a year every year for all 25 years. So in the 25th year, my payment will be $311. So in the 13th year is kind of the average payment basically, so $221 is the average I'm going to pay for this electricity. And the projected production, again, is $11,000 in the first year and $9,800 in the 25th year. Now the guaranteed production is different. So the guaranteed production in the first year is only 9,466 and goes down to 8,394 in the 25th year. So the guaranteed amount of production over the lifetime of the system is 222,995 kilowatt hours, but it's likely to produce more like 262,351. So how much am I paying per kilowatt hour then? If it's going to be different at the guaranteed versus the projected, right? So let's do some math. If I pay $156.84 a month times 12 equals $1,882 the first year, divided by 11,137, and that will be how much we paid per kilowatt hour. So 16.89 cents per kilowatt hour if I get the production that it's supposed to get. But what if I only get the guaranteed production? So that's 156.84 times 12 and then divided by 94.66, and in that case I would be paying 19.8 cents a kilowatt hour, so about 20 cents a kilowatt hour. So it only goes up a little bit. Now the current rates for the utility are 33 cents a kilowatt hour and heading north, so obviously this is instantly half the price that my utility electricity is if it gets to the projected amount. If it only gets to the guaranteed amount, then it's still 15 cents a kilowatt hour cheaper than going with the utility. So what if I have problems with my leased solar system? What do I do then? Well, I call up the solar company that installed it, and hopefully they're going to be responsive and come out and fix it right away. Now, they may not, and that's why choosing a good company is incredibly important. Now, I'm obviously going to miss production if the system is down, and really in a lease agreement, all I'm paying for is the guaranteed electricity. So what happens if my system goes down? Well, if it goes down, hopefully they're going to come right out and fix it. And if it dips below the guaranteed production amount for that year, which is 85% of the projected amount in my case and in most leases, then they will have to compensate you. For most leases, it doesn't true up for the first 3 years and then does it every year. In my case, after 2 years, they would true me up and then do it every year. So if in the first 2 years I dip below the guaranteed amount of electricity produced, at the 2-year mark, they will then write me a check for that missed production. And that's the case in almost every lease. So I hope that makes sense. So in the beginning of a lease, you could find yourself having to pay an electric bill and pay the solar bill if the system breaks, and you won't get compensated for 2 or 3 years. Really, that's the only downside to a lease. And because of that, I'm going to once again absolutely state that when you have solar, whether you lease it or own it, it is very important that you monitor it yourself. Every problem I've ever had with either of my solar systems, I've always found myself by checking the monitoring app. So that is the best advice I can give you. Monitor the system yourself. If you find a problem, call up your solar company. Please let me reiterate, one of the reasons that I chose a lease this time was because baked into the lease is 25 years of maintenance. So I don't have to worry about paying for any unknown future repairs. The system is completely covered for 25 years, and if they don't fix it, they're going to have to compensate me because they've guaranteed me a certain amount of electricity every year. So, was getting a solar lease worth it? Obviously it was worth it. I'm saving almost half now, and I have a guaranteed price for the next 25 years. The guaranteed price I have on my lease is actually less than I currently pay for electricity, so I think I'm going to be very well protected for the next 25 years. I look at leasing solar as kind of like an insurance program. It's kind of like buying insurance against future price hikes with the utility. But unlike insurance, actually it saves you money right away as well as protecting you. So in conclusion, leasing solar was the obvious choice for me this second time around. I'm very pleased with how it's going already, and I think that for many homeowners, it's the right choice to make today. And that makes me think that now is a good time to remind you that if you're interested in looking at solar, I can help you with that. If you just click on the link in the description and fill out the 30-second survey, you'll find out if you qualify. And if you do, you'll get a free solar consultation with me. All right, well, I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a great day. Please leave your questions and comments down below.